preservation. To order. And could we have the roll call, Lori?
Alternate Flanagan.
Here.
Alternate Bailey. Not here. Commissioner Whittington.
Here.
Commissioner Spillman.
Here.
Commissioner Lindquist.
Here.
Commissioner Adley.
Here.
Chair Martin.
Here.
All except for alternate Bailey. She said she would join via Zoom, but she's not got coverage at her shop, so she might not
Mm.
be able to join.
Okay, are there any revisions to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, yes, there are. Chapin, we would like to add a discussion on exemptions to the demolition. Both the moratorium and our new code. Just a discussion on that. Where would you think we should, put that under new business?
Exemptions to demolition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, basically, we need to discuss some of the language and verbiage that's in the code regarding the exemptions. Remember, like if, the fire department were to say something was.
Yeah, let's add under. Let's just say on new business is the first item, please. And this would be regarding, if someone, if they want to demolish a building and they're providing documentation to meet the stated exemption, what is that how do we determine that documentation is acceptable?
Okay, so that'll go under new business.
Yes.
We can make that
Under
number
new
one.
business A. New business A and then move everything down,
No.
if that's okay.
Well, after A1, A2, we'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll just say 3A,
Every number thereafter.
yeah.
Okay, then do I have a motion? Are there any other changes to the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Edwards moves to approve the agenda. I will second that.
Okay, in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We don't have the minutes.
No, I'm sorry, I'm two meetings behind now, I know, he's doing the same thing, because I'm 2 meetings behind on planning and zoning as well, so I will have all the minutes for you.
Okay, all right. Any comment, are there any members of the public on?
No, alternate Bailey has joined us, hello Nancy, but we have no public here right now.
Okay, well, I guess we have nothing from anybody regarding comments that are on items not on the agenda. Housekeeping items.
Okay, that would be me. There is a CLG newsletter for September in your packets, just to keep you aware. I also reached out to Tracy Lorexman for the election, asking about that data that you guys were wanting, and she gave me what data she had. I don't know if you looked over it, but that's about all we got from that. And then I did want to keep you appraised of something else on my plate. The CLG annual report will be due November 1st. So we have a month or so to get, a month and a half to get that done. So it shouldn't be any issues. I've been sending minutes all along and until this point when I stopped doing minutes. So I don't think that's going to be any kind of issue. We can actually put in our, for the first time in our annual report, that we've done a couple of section 106 reviews. And we can also update our code amendments this year that we couldn't do last year. So there's a lot of really exciting things that will be in our CLG annual report this year.
So do you need any help from any of us on that?
I don't think so at this time. It should be a gathering all the data and sending it to her. Like I said, I don't have to do all the minutes because I've been sending them to her all year. So we should be fairly good on that. So
Okay, good.
that's it.
Any other housekeeping items? No? Did you have something, Jim?
No, sorry.
Okay. Okay, new slash continued business, we want to do the mission statement first? Or do we
Let's
want
do the update.
updates? Okay,
You get the update, so let's go to number 2, and the next thing would be
Oh, the
the
update.
substantial COA update.
okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I can cover that. It seems like in your packet, we have a few listed, and then there's a few more in special with you that did not make it in the packet. Cornerstone Church at 117 East Sixth Street. They are doing I guess a re-siding of the building. They have a seamy block wall. They did not approve their original proposal. They were, I don't remember what it was. Yeah, that's right, they were stuck in, and so I told them they could do, according to the wainscot, they would need to do some kind of lap siding or board batten siding. They haven't decided on whether they're gonna do lap siding or board batten siding, which they can prove administratively. So they're just doing the coordinating metal wainscot right now. And, but yeah, I told them if they were to do stucco, most likely something staff would not recommend, and they need to come for a COA in front of you. So they're just proceeding with just the metal wainscot until they figure out I guess the budget for the rest of the siding. We had a couple minor roof replacements at a solar project. Our design standards allow solar, as long as it's not above the roof ridge and as long as it is, what's the word, trying to get parallel to the pitch of the roof, flush mounted, that's the word I'm looking for. So signed off on some, rear roofs and solar. The main thing I want to talk about today, will be about the demolition, which was also administratively approved, but we'll get to that under the new continued business. Let me just check this list. We had a lot of this in the past week, so let me just make sure I haven't missed anything. But solar. That's it for instantaneous.
And I would note that, well, they were a lot of, the two that I remember, the 414 Elm was replacing the Georgians, and then also curbs at 145 Cent. Those were actually approved in August, but received in July, if that makes sense. It really wasn't under the new ordinance yet. So these were just kind of, we just need to start tracking. So.
Anything going forward, will be under the ordinance, and what I've been doing, for example, for the Cornerstone, I did not require a separate, substantial form. I just use the building permit application that they're already submitting, saves them $75, it makes the process smoother, kind of encourages historic preservation by having a very smooth process for something that already requires a building permit application. And then I just note anything that's, important on the building permit application, I can add conditions of approval on every standard.
Question on Cornerstone Church.
Yeah,
So it's not a historically contributing building.
correct.
And there's stucco on the Fifth Street gym across the street. So what's the reasoning behind wanting to do lap siding or something like that on the cinder block walls that they have now, rather than the stucco? I'm not disagreeing with you at all, I just want to know the reason behind it.
I'm trying to remember how I approached this. I think we have, in our code, we have some standards for, buildings that are not historic. So they're
Right,
not contributing.
Right.
And I'll pull my emails in, but I think we looked at that generally, and yeah, I could pull my emails. I remember getting the specifics of this and talking about materials that were found traditionally or historically. It doesn't get into the specifics. Our design standards do, but design standards are for infill residential, and this is not a vacant site, so we're looking at using the code criteria, which generally talks about, materials being
More traditional.
historically accurate, more traditional materials.
Okay.
So it doesn't specifically spell out stucco like our design standards do,
Right,
but that language was enough to regulate that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments, questions, anything else?
I may have one regarding setbacks. Do you approve variances for setbacks, like if somebody has they wanna put a garage in their backyard and they wanna line it up with all the rest of them on the alley, is that something that you would approve a variance like that?
So I guess there's two categories for setbacks. So setbacks under the zoning code would not come in front of the HPC, would go in front of P and Z and eventually the Board of Adjustment for a variance. But then under your design standards for like new infill, or, you know, the code we just passed for additions, you know, accessory structures, modifications, and then that would be subject to design standards. Our infill design standards do talk about the setback that is in keeping with, you know, the established pattern along the street. I guess you interpret that to be along the alley.
Yeah.
But if someone was requesting a variance from that and under the zoning code, which has a specific dimension, you know, not the historical line, but under the zoning code, then I would not for that administrator, they would have to apply for a variance, they would have to meet certain criteria for the variance. And that would, you go in front of the Board of Adjustment, whoever that is.
I've done a few of those.
If it's all city council members,
It is.
okay, okay.
They basically during the city council meeting, just read a different script and ask the Board of Variance or Board of Adjustment. I think.
Board of Adjustment.
Oh, so that's the
They
city.
hear variance.
Yeah, so it's not something that I would encourage, but there's definitely a process if there's a unique situation which creates a hardship. They would need to demonstrate that they're meeting the criteria for a variance.
Okay,
Okay,
that's it, thanks.
anything else on this? Okay. So can we move on to the survey update?
Sure. Obviously I had a meeting, we had our kickoff meeting with, District Colorado, Metcalf and us, but then I also had a one-on-one meeting with Jenny from Metcalf to try to get some deadline or timelines figured out, what comes next, where we at. We have the deliverables due by Friday, and all of those have been given to History Colorado except for the list of properties. They want a complete list of properties, and that's something Metcalf is working on. I think I can help now that I have a tiny bit of time. I sent Metcalf our section township and range for the area that we're, and they can run an easy search through something at History Colorado, and they were gonna do that. Then I pulled some stuff on the assessor's website, and I'm getting to a good list of the 108 properties, but we also asked in that request to go a little bit outside the NHL district to make sure that our boundaries are right and help us in determining whether we need to extend our boundaries or not. So there'll be a little more properties, but we're working on that. The only thing we haven't done is that list. So as long as we get that by Friday, we'll be fine. Also, we talked about in the meeting, we talked about getting some volunteers to maybe gather building permits. I don't think our building permits are gonna be as helpful as Metcalf thinks. They understand now that we had the fire in the 1940s, which they're not gonna have as much information as they want from that, but photos, talking to Metcalf, and I thought, what about some of the people that have been pretty helpful with us? Janice Fox and some of the other people that might be, would they be willing to volunteer some of their time and help show some photographs or meet with these people from Metcalf? I just thought, should we reach out to any of them to ask for their assistance in?
Janice Fox in particular, it might even be worth the HBC to pay for her time to meet with Metcalf,
Okay,
because she's so familiar with the historic archives at the library and at County Hall.
right.
She in particular, it would be a good research person for Metcalf to reach out to.
Okay, does anybody have a good relationship with her that you wanna ask, or should I just reach out to her? Cause I don't want to.
To Janice?
Yeah.
I have a good relationship with her,
Do you wanna ask her
but it's
about
good
it?
enough that she'll say, hell no.
Well,
So, I mean,
that's
maybe
what
she-
we need.
Maybe she would, be more amenable,
And maybe ask her if she did charge, what would she charge? And maybe, we're getting some grants, we didn't spend our own budget money for some of this stuff so far, so maybe we do have some money to pay her, but we would need to know what kind of
Yeah, even if it was a very limited amount of time, an hour or 2 hours to be able to meet with somebody from Metcalf, she could point them in the right direction and save them a tremendous amount of time, so it might be worth reaching out to her.
I mean, I will reach out to her
Yeah,
and she will tell me truthfully how
Okay,
she feels. She's working at the synagogue 2 days a
Okay.
week and,
Well, and
she's-
let her know if she'd feel better getting some money out of it, we would try to pay her for an hour or two.
yeah, I remember asking her if she would do something for money and
she's pretty hard dead set against the library now, but
she hates the library.
at the same time,
That seems
She just
this
likes
is
it.
still what she spends all of her time doing, so maybe we could figure out a way, whether it was recognition or paying for a couple of hours of her time, she would be worthwhile,
Mhm,
for sure.
definitely.
Okay,
And I don't know if there's somebody at the library that you would think would be worthwhile too. I don't, I'm not that familiar with the library anymore.
Well, they've been selling off a lot of their stuff lately, so they don't have the collection that they used to have. But yeah, she would be a logical starting place.
okay. Would you mind then reaching out?
No, I
to
don't
her and
mind.
Letting me know,
I don't
and then we
mind.
can go from there. And if you guys think of anyone else that you think might be, a plethora of knowledge that maybe we don't have, I would want to get them in touch with Metcalf.
And maybe if Janice does give us a hard no, maybe we can recommend somebody.
Mhm.
That's true. That's true.
And I know that she has a lot of photos,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's kind of why I was thinking of her.
so.
And then, we also, in your packet, there is a questionnaire. The first questionnaire is the one that Metcalf sent me as an example that they had from a town that they worked with. And then the second one is me real quick trying to make it lead bills. In the email, they also asked, the email talking about these questionnaires, what the new, at least the new architecture, whatever historian she is, I'm sorry, suggested that we include something on that questionnaire about outbuildings.
Yeah.
Because if we don't say something about them, we're not gonna get as much information as we need. So somewhere in that second questionnaire, we need to figure out where it would be a good place to put it, and maybe more room for some more information, but we need to make sure that anybody who knows anything about their outbuilding is communicating that. We also as soon as we get this questionnaire ready, I'm thinking that we should put it with the flyer, and the mayor's been asking about when we can get that flyer out, but again, it also has to do with getting those specific houses in that area narrowed down so that we're not sending the flyer to everyone, just sending it to that particular group. So we've got a little bit more work to do on that, but I would like to have, and this is something you guys need to decide. I thought it would be a good idea to have the flyer and the questionnaire on the same thing that went out. We can have a meeting, a public meeting, and have have those questionnaires here. But it would really be a great opportunity to have those questionnaires already filled out and those people already notified to come to that public meeting. But then, we could still have extra copies here, but I would like to get those people to come to that first public meeting so that they could talk with the Metcalf people. And I think they were talking about, mid-October is when Metcalf plans on being here in person. So we'll have to narrow that down and get a better date, so.
So is the flyer, like when I read this, the first thing I thought is homeowner was, well, when's it gonna happen and are they gonna come on my property?
And to me, that's the other side of
That's
that
the
lot.
one careful.
Yes,
The other, just one thought I had is, would it make sense to provide Metcalf with some kind of credentials? So if someone questioned, what are you doing here? Why are you taking pictures of my house? They could show a letter or some.
well, that's kind of why we wanted to send the flyer out. Mayor, what are your thoughts on?
I don't know, it's a good point.
It is.
People, when they want somebody to come to their house, they want to have some idea of legitimacy of that person. I was thinking, just as we were talking about this, I think the only way you're gonna get these flyers filled out is go to them. That's my opinion.
I think actually both of those, that's exactly what I was thinking too, that we mail them out, but we also hand deliver one and put it on every front door. in the entire
Well,
survey.
or knock on the door and say,
Right.
can I help you fill this out right now?
That's a
I'll
good
do
idea.
it on the spot.
Mhm.
I don't know, I just,
It's a super short questionnaire, and it would immediately ID anybody who had additional information. So, but you're right, that's the only way we're gonna get any real kind of turnout.
and I'd be glad to take X number of houses, whatever that is, and be assigned those. And it might require more than just one pass.
Of course,
Just thought.
yeah, no, I'd be willing to do that too.
Well,
You
I
know-
think we need to reach as many people as we can and how many ways we can.
Right, and however,
And especially the people who are not here, you know, our own
Right.
lives, but are
that's kind of
absentee.
my concern is who we're gonna be missing.
So that's where the mail ones would help, and then we also would do it twice. All right.
I mean, we know our community best, and we know your community best, but Metcalf also does this a lot. So what is Metcalf's position on kind of that engagement with people to get this volunteer information?
They just basically suggested the flyers, the questionnaire, really publicizing in the newspaper and on any kind of social media that we might have, our website. Just really putting it out there about a public meeting. They said that the more you can draw them in, and then they can explain a little more about what they're doing once you get the people in. But they just they talked about really marketing it out in the community, whether it was Facebook or the city that they just did had a Facebook page, and it was on there, and it gave a number for people to call with questions, and they said they got quite a few calls. So it's a matter of how your town receives that communication. I mean, is it the newspaper? Is it the door-to-door flyers?
Is there a way to modify some of our HPC signs? You know, that we could post in the neighborhood, survey underway, something like that, that would be a visual, hyper-local visual.
That's really good.
That's a really
Kind of
good
like
idea.
what Streets Department does for streets closure or something.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, historic survey underway, something
Historic
like
survey.
that, just so people know to reach out and ask, or they're aware that something's going
and
on.
maybe with our website or a phone
Post it in
number
a
on.
couple of places in each block, and then also get our HPC logo out there.
That's a good idea.
And we already own the sign, so just adding something to the bottom of the sign that says historic survey underway or something like that
That's a good idea.
would see, at least start people talking.
Yes, yeah. So,
You know, when they take the pictures, should they do it just from the main street?
Made from all right of ways, and that's one thing, if you get asked any questions, they're not asking anyone to go onto their property, all of it, if they get invited, or if someone in a questionnaire wants them to come up and get closer, that's great. But all of their pictures will be from a right of way, either
Alley.
sidewalk, an alley,
Okay,
street, it will all be from the right of way.
Well, and typically they're only concerned with facade, so I doubt seriously they'd even be going into the alleys.
unless,
The sidewalk is as close as they can legally get without being invited on
Yes.
the property.
if they're in the alley though, if they can't really see the outbuildings in the back.
Outbuildings, yeah.
Yeah, that's where we'd be relying on the homeowners.
Yes.
Oh,
So I think it's gonna take us figuring out what our best outreach to the public is on this as a city, instead of, you know, I agree with what do they normally do, and Metcalf kind of fine tunes it to any particular town. What's our best way to get people, you know, tell them we're changing the code, and they'll be here. Tax.
so they get, of the outbuildings, they get the best pictures they can from the street.
From the street or the sidewalk
Or the
or the
sidewalk.
alley, yes, but there's a lot of fences that they can't even climb on a fence to go
Right.
take a picture of it, they have to take a picture from the alley. So that's gonna be one of our worries, is making sure we capture all of these outbuildings.
Right,
So, and that's, you know, on the west side, that's something I worry about, because there's just so many. So we're gonna have to really engage the homeowners.
Would it be completely out of line if they brought a step ladder? And we're able to get up over it. and just take
Yeah.
photos?
Yeah,
Police officer, that's, it really,
yeah, that comes, yeah, that's overstepping bounds.
that's, yeah, right on that.
Just exactly the same way it would be if you saw somebody doing it at your house.
Exactly.
That,
I know I lose it.
that puts people in danger, that's the hard.
Get a
Keeping
drone.
calm is not the thing. So, those are the things that we need to figure out. If we can get this questionnaire and flyer out pretty quickly, see if we get some response, then if we don't, well, even if we do get a little response, I think we're gonna have to go the door-to-door route, but we also, we are now, oh my gosh, this is almost mid-September, so we only have about a month to get people talking about it, get our, get a date set for our first public meeting kind of a thing, where we have Metcalf here.
Any chance of an article in the paper or a notice in the paper about the historic survey?
There can probably be a story, but, if you want to promote it more, would require probably advertising.
Yeah, of course.
I think we can do that. I think we should do that. And just like the flyer, we also have to remember that everything that we publicize about the survey has to have all these blurbs from all of our grants, which now we have 4. So each of them do require, this survey paid, funded in part by the following grants. I mean, it's not a big deal to include in everything, but it's something we have to give credit to the people that are funding it.
That also adds legitimacy to what we're doing.
Yes, absolutely.
And
So that's gonna
let's
be a-
focus on that this isn't necessarily their tax dollars, this is.
Exactly.
This
This is funded by completely, several different
Mhm.
little places and
Yeah.
grants, so. But it's something we need to make sure that we include in everything we're doing.
So when people have questions and they want to call in, are they gonna call you?
I believe so.
So,
I mean,
so if we had our yard signs that we already had,
mhm,
and we did an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in a sleeve taped to the bottom of it, that we could hang and then staple to the stake, why couldn't we say historic survey, in progress, for information, please call with your phone number, and that's all we need to say on it. But that would give them the contact information, whether it be an email or a phone number,
Right.
probably not both,
but so,
but give them a person to call or a.
but would
person
that
to
be
email.
Lori?
Would that,
Okay,
I mean, we don't-
the questionnaire, Metcalf wants their information on the questionnaire. They want the emails with pictures or anything to go to them. They want calls asking,
So that would go to
so
them.
that would go to them. So I don't see a problem with putting my phone number on there, on the signs, to get them that information, because then I could also send that person that calls me one of the questionnaires or one of the flyers to give them Metcalf's
Mhm.
contact information as
I'm
well.
just thinking you're kind of swamped, Jeanette.
I am, but I really need to get this funnel to the right people, so I would rather do that than put a Metcalf phone number on there, that just doesn't seem right.
well, and couldn't it be your email rather than your phone number, so that it's something that you can handle that?
That's true,
Your own-
that's true,
Instead of being beholden to the telephone?
that's true, we can do that, we can put the address, the email address there. However you guys want to do it, we want to ask a question, so however it's easiest,
Mhm.
I would prefer they call me or email me instead of not doing anything.
Yeah, we could also, I don't know where capacity is, but we could also just create a separate website page. That says for info, go to City of Leadville / historic surveys or something.
Mhm.
And then on that website, we have both your contact information for.
Metcalf and-
And then.
No, I definitely, we should do that too, yeah.
Can we just make that a QR code, like one of those little?
That's where I need
People
the
use it.
I think it depends on the.
Depends on the client.
Yeah, so I think of the people that would use it, they definitely would use it. Over, if I got a flyer, I wouldn't necessarily go that way.
But if you got the QR code, you can
Yeah.
do that.
I'd be more likely
The
to.
QR code will link you to that.
Okay, you mean on the.
Yeah,
on
if
the
you put
questionnaire
it,
itself.
or if you put it in the newspaper. And,
Maybe.
yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
just a thought.
And I can certainly,
After the pandemic, I hate QR codes, so that's just me.
I
I
know.
never liked to begin with, I don't get it. It freaks
And
me
like,
out.
anytime a menu has it, where it's like, I have to pull up the menu.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it goes into, so yeah.
Yeah, I just wouldn't do it.
Um,
I'm so old fashioned.
can we? So what can you, put the district together that's being surveyed? And maybe break it into 2 or 3 or 4 common sense parts, so that we could get a few people to go door to door.
Absolutely. I think once we get this address list together that we're trying to get together for the grant people anyway, that's gonna give us,
Because we've only got 4
Easier-
weeks really. to get
right,
this
an
done.
easier way to mail out flyers, it's gonna give us an easier, let's just fine tune it down, so yeah, I could definitely.
Now, are these flyers, the city flyers, only going to this area, or are they going to inform the entire community of what we're doing?
I personally thought they should only go to that group, what did you think, didn't you
Right,
agree?
right, we have to be able to, pick out those addresses.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think they should just go to those.
Okay.
I think any, Main Street on their newsletter can put something about the survey going on, we can run an ad and about the survey going on. But the main people we need to engage in the survey are those people in that particular survey area. So the flyers will be, and the questionnaires will only be going to those people.
Okay,
So I guess I would like you guys' input on the questionnaire and even the flyer. I haven't even attempted the flip side of that questionnaire, which is gonna be basically, like Stuart said, explaining that there's a survey going on, this is what it's gonna be. It's being done by these people during this time period, some more of the information that they're gonna wanna know about the actual survey and maybe even try to get that first public meeting date in there so that we can start getting people to come to it on the flyer.
yeah, I think the public meeting is important, that we should get that near the beginning of the process.
Right.
That'll
I
give people
agree.
a chance, if they're really concerned, to ask their questions in person.
So I guess that's kind of where I'm at, and is trying to figure out what would be a good date to have the public meeting, and then from there, we can figure out how to lay out the flyer / questionnaire so that we can get it out pretty quick.
The HPC meets twice in October, the 10th and the 24th, so we've been thinking October, it kind of goes back to how we did the open house for the code amendments. I think we chose, we had 2 different times, I think, we did, I think, a 4 and then a 5. There's arguments, some people, that even those times may not work for some people, maybe need to be 6 o'clock if they're going home from work and kids and all those things, so. Something to consider, we could do it during regular HPC kind of time block, but then that 4 to 6 time may not be the best time, maybe 5 to 7 or 6 to 7 or something like that. City council, let's see here. City council meets in this room on the 10th, after HPC, I don't think they meet on the 24th, that's confirmed.
24th?
Yeah, I don't have anything on the calendar, I'm just gonna check.
You guys meet October 24th?
October 24th,
Yes.
we almost certainly will, because that's the start.
Budget, I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure they're gonna help. Every week.
Yeah, there's nothing on the agenda right now.
No, I
understand that.
That would be the first one after we get October financials, to put in place the budget revenue, so. That's especially what.
HPC could also meet here and then, I guess, conclude the meeting early and then go to another location.
How about the courtroom upstairs?
Access,
Huh?
access.
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
Public meetings upstairs at the top.
yeah, making everybody climb those steps and wear them down.
And we get asked why we don't have the elevator. We start that whole-
Would
We don't want to do it.
Maybe use the old church across the street.
I was gonna say, we could even rent out the old church, that would be Carl would probably think make it a deal or something like that, and we'll something to do over there.
Where did you say?
I liked that last time we had our meeting, so. Or even, you know, if we think it's gonna be ginormous, we could do the trade, I'd rather keep it close to here, I love the thought of using the old church.
Yeah, the old church would be nice because it's adjacent to the survey area.
Mhm.
Exactly.
It's pretty good, you know, a lot of people can fit in there
Exactly,
if they try.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, that is a really good idea.
yeah. Wonder if we have to pay for that.
I'll ask Carl, it's really pretty cheap, even if we do, I know when I was doing stuff for the fire department, that was a backup for our awards ceremony that we had at Station 2.
Mm,
They didn't think it was gonna get open in time, so I had another plan B, and I worked with Carl,
mhm.
$125, it was really fairly cheap.
Yeah, just to run across the street would be.
But yeah, I think it'd be.
So
pretty-
actually, 6 P.M. across the street on the 24th, Tuesday the 24th.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh,
So we'd have our meeting at 4, and then there might be a period of time between our meeting
or if we wanted to, you know, just have to go back up. I'll just be back. I'll just be back. What was the question?
and, no, I made a comment, I said, so we would have our meeting at 4 and then have
What
the,
if we didn't have our meeting until 5? If we were gonna have the open house at 6, maybe we wouldn't start our meeting that day until 5. Take care of our meeting, and if you think we should adjourn and go over there, or have that be part of our meeting, or.
I mean, isn't the rescheduling that time just yet, just in, like between now and then I could get a COA?
That's true.
or 2.
So we'll plan for what you said, Marcia,
Mhm.
starting our meeting at 4, and
And
then,
then-
yeah, I think that's a good
So we meet
idea.
here on the silver dollar and then.
I was just gonna say that, the silver dollar's kind of a hike.
Before and after.
Manhattan.
Not too far, we're not going very far.
Okay.
Important mentions around that meeting and bring, you know, poster boards and.
They did say that they would have a lot of information set up, and there's 2 or 3 of them that will be coming down, and basically, yes, I would say at that point, they would be answering questions and asking people for specific things and having some materials that they want to show what they're doing, and maybe even some, sample. What are those forms that they have to fill out?
Cultural resource survey.
That one, you know, they might even have some sample of that to show what their end product will kind of
Mhm.
look like. So, yes. Maybe.
So before then, we would have the flyers sent out.
I would like to hope, I would think we need to do that. If we don't get the flyers out and ads in the paper, we're not gonna have much of a turnout for our public meeting.
Mhm.
So even, I think at that point, we should even have gone door to door if we need to, and make sure that we got everybody who could engage
Mhm.
in that, so,
Could be announced on the sign as well. There's a public meeting regarding.
right, and I really think that should be on our flyer too, the date of our public
Mhm.
meeting, and we can have more than one if we think that's necessary. The way Metcalf explained it, is they tend to have one at the beginning to engage the public, and then they also have one at the end to kind of give a rough summary of their findings.
I think the website, you know, having a page on the city's website is a good idea, because on that sign, you could say, survey in progress, see website for info on open house dates, you know, staff, et cetera. And we could have information on the open house on the website also. And when you start putting too much information on a sign, you start to lose people. So NH, you know, logo, HPC logo, you know, survey in progress, and then, you know, here's all the information. So yeah, I think that would
Mhm.
Yep.
be a close, yeah.
Yeah, that works, and then we can put things on Facebook and Leadville bitch and moan and. Reach a lot of people, but, yeah. So this will be our first meeting, okay. We'll get the flyers out like a couple weeks in advance. Doesn't give a lot of time, does it?
No, we really need to have it pretty much hammered out at our next meeting. Completely hammered out. So if you guys want to send me some thoughts and comments and things you'd like to see on that flyer in the next 2 weeks, then at that next meeting on the 26th, I can have, you know, something printed up that shows what it's gonna look like, and we can tweak it from there, but at least the majority of it will be there, so.
If we have to go door to door, will that mean actually knocking on doors and
I think so.
mailboxes?
I do think so. I mean, I think we can leave a flyer if nobody answers, but I think it's worth knocking and explaining a little bit and saying, if you have time to fill this out now, I can wait, kind of like the mayor said. Kind of play it by ear, how you are received when we knock. But we could also plan an afternoon if people are available to go do that and knock that out,
Okay,
you know, one afternoon, evening type. When everybody's available.
Well, we could get some candidates too, and they could be passing out there.
Exactly, yeah, and anybody that we think that might want to volunteer to be part of this, like Janice or some of the others that really enjoy the historic preservation and have the pictures and done some research.
Yeah, I hope once we finish this, that we will have more people who will be interested in being involved
Right,
and as we go on.
and it'll be easier the next time for the next area that we survey. Plus, we will have done them by ourselves, so we will know a little more about what works and what doesn't. Scott, Nancy, do you guys have any thoughts on any of this?
Nothing beyond what you all have already talked about.
Thanks. You busy?
Okay, so we'll nail this all down next
I
meeting.
think so. I'll try to put a rough draft together with one side the questionnaire and the other side the flyer that talks about the October 24th. Yeah. Meeting, and if you guys have any thoughts before then, please email me and I'll include them into the rough draft that I'll show you next.
The only thing I had about the survey, what I was looking about, the survey talks about people who have photos, scanning them and sending them in, and there are probably some people who are not up to scanning
Right,
their own photos and sending them in, so there should be some alternative for them to get their photos scanned.
right, and I would certainly be happy to have anyone come up to my office and let me scan the photos. I would definitely take that time, because that's some stuff we're not gonna get if we don't find another way.
Okay.
So they can either bring them to me and not worry about that,
Mhm.
and I can scan them and give them
Okay.
back their originals. I wouldn't want them to mail their pictures to them, or, you know, I would want to scan them so that we can get back to them.
It's my understanding, the photos that will be used in the template, in the cultural resource survey, where they will have a space for the photo, is gonna be a current photo from right away. You know, most of the time it's probably gonna be of the primary facade. But historical photos are obviously super helpful for the historian, you know, when they're researching. And I guess through this process, we're probably gonna be developing, a server archive of those types of photos to be used for the survey and going forward. So ultimately, we're not making up in the cultural resource survey, but that those photos might provide information that's communicated in writing on the wall.
Mhm. Okay. Anything more on the survey?
I don't think so.
Okay. The State Historical Fund, we submitted that sort of like preview application, right?
A draft.
Yes.
We sent in our draft. What did I say, yesterday? Yes, yesterday. And I did get today, I got an email confirmation that your application has been received. Your draft application will be reviewed. So I think they asked that we give them 7 days.
Mhm.
Find that email. Scott, do you want to talk anything about that? Or?
I don't think so. Thanks to everyone who sent in suggestions. They were helpful in revising it. And hopefully we'll get some good feedback from History Colorado and then be able to turn around a revision by, I think October 2nd is the deadline for the final draft. So yeah, hopefully we'll have more info at the next meeting about revisions and everything.
I agree. I also, I just want to make sure Lindsay got a copy of this, because she has always been so great, and I'm sure she will in the normal process. But we send it to a different email address, so I did forward it to Lindsay Llewellyn and asked her if she had a chance to please review and give us any comments. And I did receive an email back from, not from Lindsay, but they did say, thank you, we received your draft. Please allow up to 7 business days for staff to respond with comments. So we have about a week. So Scott's right, hopefully by our next meeting, we will have gotten some good feedback from them and can finalize our draft. I'll be sure to put that on next week's or the next meeting's agenda so that we will have gotten their comments back by then.
Okay. Anything else on the grant application? Steve was kind enough to offer to try to get some letters along with me for the people, and I'm sure he regrets that.
Well, it's just that nobody wants to actually write their own letter. They want me to write the letter for
And
them.
let them sign it.
So that's kind of a thing.
Mhm.
But we've gotten 2. I don't know, have you gotten any?
Haven't gotten any, but I gave them a later deadline. I gave them,
Yeah, I did.
Later
I
this-
just said, I didn't.
you said
Yeah, I
now.
said by the end of this week,
Mhm.
so.
But I have some people
Pushy.
who said they will do it, and I know that Greg will do it too, even though he has. Right, did you get my letter, my note?
When did you send it?
Last week, early last week.
I'll go find it.
That's okay, but we want another letter from you. I sent you your old letter. I said it was fine. Just redo it to the, the new, it'll be
I
simple.
will go find it.
And there were 2 people who told me they were doing it, Nan Anderson and Sarah Day. And we'll have at least 5.
That's
And are
Sure.
these for all the grants? Or are these just for?
This is for El Pomar and,
El Pomar and,
yeah,
okay,
so,
They're generic.
okay, that's what I
sort
didn't
of,
know.
yours are more generic than mine.
Yeah, no, I wanted to put them in, so.
But it's good, it'll work. And so, yeah, we can't keep coming back to these people probably month after month, though.
Well, I don't see why not. We get asked to do an awful lot of letters of support and we do them, and it's, we're a small community. We only have so many people to reach out to that know what we do and support what we do.
Well, there are certain people who will always be helpful to us, no matter what, because we will be helpful to them.
Right.
And it's quid pro quo,
Just like your St. George's letter, which I like a lot because I'm supposed to be doing a letter of support for the Manhattan
Mm,
for Bill Comkowicz to work on his grant, and he's doing a mini grant.
mhm.
And so this is just like a perfect, we did one for the Tabor not too long ago, but the Tabor's grants are so ginormous and so big that their letters of support are pretty specific. It's either about how it helps Main Street or how it helps underprivileged communities. It's just always so that their letter is not generic to me. Their letter of support is a lot more.
The last time though, Sarah Day at the table,
She-
she came to me and said, can we use your old letter? Do you just have, can we?
Oh,
And I thought,
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can do that in the future.
And I don't see why we can't do that
Yeah.
as well, using people's letters.
And I did one for the Iron Building too,
Oh, cool.
but that just, we need this in a couple days. I just.
Right.
One,
Right.
and,
And I need to do on one. So, that reminds me of this St. George's letter. Is that a letter that they're asking of the HPC or,
HPC.
okay. Are you gonna handle that one?
Hmm?
Are you gonna handle that letter as chair of the HPC?
Yeah, that's what I thought I'd do. That's what I've always done, just done it on the behalf of it.
I know. Can I send you Bill Conkowich's?
No, he has to ask me himself. I'm sorry.
Fine.
But anyway, no, I do think that's one thing we can do is to really encourage people who are going for these grants,
Absolutely.
even if they're trying to get money out of the same pot we are.
You know, right, and that's what I thought about Bill, but he is actually going for the mini grant, which is
Mhm.
actually a different set of dollars than the bigger grants are, so we're not actually competing for the same actual money, but I'm sure at some point we will. I mean,
No, I'm glad that people are becoming, you know, more cognizant of the fact that this money is available.
Right.
It's really helpful to.
which reminds me, it's like, this seems like a weird place to throw this in, but we're talking about grants. I got an email from the National Money director, which just hit me all wrong. I was like, no, Steve is the director. I was like, wait, he did retire, so I guess it's okay, somebody else has that title. But they're gonna have to replace their elevators, it's been down for over a year. And they've tried to get it work done, they've spent a lot of money on it, and now they're being told that they're just gonna have to upgrade it. I mean, we're 88, they gotta be 88 compliant anyway, and they can only patchwork fix it for so long, and now that's not working, so they're gonna have to redo it, and it is $125,000, and they're asking, do we have any way of looking for grants? They can't get a grant from History Colorado because it's for maintenance, and it's not considered a renovation or anything like that. From History Colorado, it's just, and I am at a loss on where grant money would be for something like that. I mean, it's like we've talked about forever, these old historic buildings, and my museum's not even that old and historic. But
Sort of is.
trying to find the money to stay compliant with new codes, new building codes, new ADA stuff, is really gonna be.
I think there should be money somewhere for
You
AD.
would think, and I'm just wondering, does anybody have any ideas of where?
They're probably gonna have to go federal.
Yep.
And,
Okay.
so Department of Agriculture might be a possibility, places like that, but, they're gonna have to figure it out themselves.
Oh, that's kind of what I thought. I said, I can look at the resources we normally have, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. So I did tell her I would look and ask, but I just don't have anything. I'm also gonna ask Lindsay Llewellyn to see if she knows about, another great person would be those people that we had met with the Tabor Opera House, the Parks Department people. For those, that would be federal money, so I might ask Poppy, wasn't that her name? Remember those people that came?
I remember, but I don't
Poppy and
remember their
somebody
names.
else? Anyway, I'll figure that out, or tell them to figure it out. But I just wondered about that, but,
Mhm.
okay, so we're gonna do a letter to St. George, and then I'll do the letter to Mr. Comfort for the Manhattan Building. And do we have any more updates, Scott, on El Pomar or what's the other one?
No big updates. I revised the El Pomar grant application, but we'll wait until after we get feedback from the History Colorado folks on our SHF grant, and hopefully be able to incorporate some of that into El Pomar before we then submit that later this fall, hopefully. At least that's the plan.
Okay. Is that it for the grants?
I believe so.
Okay. Demolition.
All right. So in the previous code and the new code we adopted, city council adopted, there's an exemption for demolition of historic buildings. And when moratorium took place, went into effect, there was language included in the moratorium for exemptions for unsafe buildings. And that language pretty much, it's not the exact same language, but it's pretty darn close to what was previously in the code, what's in the code right now. So in, just several months ago, maybe early spring, late winter, property owner for building at 211 East 6th Street came to me and said, I have a building that is in disrepair and I would like to demolish it. I said, well, we currently have a demolition moratorium in place. And that moratorium is so that we can revise our code and figure out how we want to address applications for demolitions of buildings.
So the purpose of this moratorium is to not allow demolition of buildings. And he said, well, are there any exemptions for unsafe buildings? Pull up the ordinance. Sure enough, it's the same language that's in the code for exemptions. And I'm just gonna read this, this language, it's about a paragraph from this ordinance. For the moratorium that we're currently in, it goes through November, but this is pretty much this is the language that's basically in code also. Once the moratorium is lifted, it says, nothing in this ordinance shall prohibit the issuance of orders or correction notices or the implementation of emergency enforcement actions. So keywords, correction notices, emergency enforcement actions. Authorized by law for the purpose of correcting or abating conditions relative to any historic structure or site determined to be dangerous to life, health, or property in accordance with building and or life and safety code duly adopted by the city or such other governing authority with jurisdiction, including when deemed necessary, the demolition of a partial demolition of a building or structure within the NHL district. Or demolition or partial demolition. So I said, in order to have this building deemed dangerous, that would need to come from either the building department or the fire department. Those are the two agencies that have governing jurisdiction. So in this case, the property owner went to the fire department, had the fire department come out and do an inspection. And I think that inspection occurred in January, so that may have predated the time that they came to me, because I think they wanted to talk to them for a few months now. And they produced a letter. That letter was dated January 3rd. So this was just brought to me last week. And this letter from the fire department said that the fire department has inspected the property and they approve of demolition of the building. And I said, well, you know, this says that they approve of this, but if you pull out the language in this ordinance, that this letter is not titled a correction notice or emergency enforcement action. Yes, the fire department is a governing authority with jurisdiction, and the letter did talk about this building being hazardous to being a hazardous building. So I called and emailed Fire Marshal Chief Boyle and said, Chief Boyle, I need if this letter is going to be used to authorize demolition of this building for some of the city's code section, this moratorium. You know, I would need something further. I have to do this by the book. So what is your position on this? Are you just approving of this, or are you actually conducting some kind of enforcement? Because I don't know exactly what their policies and their criteria are under their fire code. And explain to him what I would need. Here's the code section. This is what if we're producing a letter, this is what we would have to say. So are you just approving it, or do you plan to issue some other enforcement action or some order for demolition of building? And he came back and said that his letter can be considered an emergency enforcement action. So, you know, in summary, the applicant came forward proposing to demolish the building. We don't have a demolition permit, keep that in mind, but we do have a COA. And went back and said, you have to provide documentation because you can't do this under the moratorium. They came back with that documentation. Basically that documentation, this needs to be vetted further with the fire department, back and forth with the fire department to the point where they're saying, yes, this is an emergency enforcement action. So I think the question for the HPC tonight is, and maybe before I ask that, I should say, so then after that, I typed up a letter saying, this is what the moratorium says. This is the information that the city has received. Planning director finds planning director finds that the fire department's letter is an emergency enforcement action. They're determined to be dangerous, and the fire department is a governing authority of jurisdiction. So, in other words, I kind of felt like my hands were tied in that situation. I don't know if this is something that we are going to see repeatedly. But, I think it is of concern because this property owner for this particular building was able to go through this process. And
Never touch anybody.
it doesn't really matter that it was in the, whether that it was under the moratorium, because the same language is in the code. So this is something, even after the moratorium comes through, this is something that we can see, so. I reached out to, Chief Boyle, I have a meeting set up for next Wednesday. And I'm going to, sit down with the fire marshal and explain our position. Explain that we understand every single building cannot be preserved, but it is our mission, it is our duty. If buildings can be preserved, that they should be preserved, and we have a process in place, and it's our position that we do not want to have any kind of loopholes, that was the whole purpose of the ordinance that we just passed. Any kind of loopholes for people to circumnavigate what is a reasonable public process that we have in place, the certificate of appropriateness process. So, question for the HPC tonight is, does the HPC find, I'm considering I'm gonna meet with the fire department next week, explain our position, explain that, we would like to have an understanding of the criteria, even though this is not our jurisdiction, but it kind of is, we'd like to understand the criteria for fire departments, deeming a building, to be demolished as an emergency enforcement action. So that we can understand, so we have a better understanding that, we're reassured that this is not something that just anybody can come through and do, and, oh yeah, any building that's, that's standing, is not currently occupied, can be demolished. So, I will leave the fire department and I'll report back to the HPC. I think the question for the HPC is, does the HPC find that the language in the code, in moratorium and the code, should be revised, or, and I think this is the important piece, is maybe even more likely, should there be additional administrative procedures to ensure that a building, we're better defining what emergency enforcement action is through the fire department.
Yeah. Two things, even with an emergency enforcement action connotates some kind of an action. There's a reason why it needs to happen right now. And Chief Boyle just verbally saying you can consider this is not, wouldn't meet any standard whatsoever. I think that at minimum, Chief Boyle, representing the fire department, should have had to put it on letterhead in exactly that form and be able to present it to city council. I don't see any reason why any demolition in Leadville, especially in the National Historic District, would at least touch city council. Yeah. And if Chief Boyle is gonna say, yeah, this is an emergency executive action, it needs to be on his letterhead. Yeah. A verbal wouldn't hold up anywhere.
Got it in an email, but it was not
Yeah.
letterhead.
And it was a secondary thing. So are you considering this? Yes, you can consider this. That's not what an emergency action order is.
Yeah.
So two things, word of mouth or a last minute email for something that's been going on for 9 months is completely unacceptable. In any demo, regardless of function, should have to go through city council, even if it doesn't touch us. It needs to touch somebody. The people who own that property have been slowly taking it apart for the 7 years I've been walking by it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they own a construction company. It's not like that building couldn't be saved. They never had any intention of saving it, and they found another loophole to get around it. It's frustrating as hell as part of the HPC.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, you have to have some kind of reasonable exemption in place for if there is a building that is, about to collapse and cause harm, that, otherwise you didn't have that kind of exemption, you would get sued like crazy.
Absolutely, but then there should be some proof there.
Right, but this was obviously used, this path was obviously used as a loophole, so even if I guess we'll get more information from the fire department next week for criteria, because I think understanding is a huge part of this that has to happen before we take this further. But even if emergency enforcement action was the title of the letterhead, and he was.
But at least somebody would then have a paper trail to go back and say, okay, this person authorized it, this is what he called it, and this is the channel it went through. At least there's an answer there. It's not just a, oh, well, yeah, it seems kind of dangerous. I know you've been using it for storage for 10 years, but, you know, hey. And on the top of 8th Street, somewhat related, we had a meth house 2 years ago that was condemned and scheduled for demolition. And Chief Boyle was able to reverse that. Chief Boyle himself reversed that and said, no, you can renovate that house. You don't have to tear it down. And by national standards, any meth producing facility is supposed to be condemned and demolished. So there's a wishy-washy trail there already.
Right.
So not having any actual proof, a piece of paper that's labeled properly and properly signed and whatever,
Right.
that it just doesn't seem to hold up very well.
Did you find it arbitrary decision?
So arbitrary is absolutely right, and I can point to arbitrary decisions made by exactly the same person in the same type of situation. This is what absolutely should have happened and something different happened because somebody changed their mind.
And that's what we were talking about, the criteria that has to be, we need something in place even for the fire department to say that it has to, you need to see what criteria you're basing the decision on, because that's what Jake and I were saying, we can't have arbitrary decisions.
Like
They're
there's
gonna have you rhyme or reason.
like a checklist of some kind that they go
Right.
through.
To be honest, it ought to start with a structural engineer standard.
Yeah.
And that's, so how I communicated, I guess, and interpreted this section for people coming to my office, said I want to demolish the building. I said, okay, well, these are the requirements that you have to meet in order to get approval. So the first thing is showing them the requirements to be code. And then, you know, they're saying, what's dangerous, that's to be demolished right now, then there's the exemption part of the code. But under, governing authority with jurisdiction, I have interpreted that to be building department and fire department. So for the building department, that would be a structural engineer's letter. Yeah, for fire department, I don't know what the criteria are.
Maybe the fire department, if they want to be able to issue that order, they ought to have to pay for a separate inspection.
So that's,
Maybe they have a little skin in the game and that would solve this problem.
yeah, that's,
If it actually cost them some resources, they actually had to do something other than just say, yeah, you can consider it a, then maybe that makes somebody think a little bit longer and harder about issuing a demolition permit.
yeah, I think I'm potentially talking, when we talk to the fire department about going even further, because I completely agree with the emergency enforcement action. That was frustrating as hell to, I basically got to the point where I felt like I had to apologize to the fire department for pestering them. I said, this is my 4th email, I flew this by the book, I need to have this clarification. And, so it was frustrating, it was very frustrating, I felt like it shouldn't have had to have been like that, so I agree with that, but I think where I'm going is, I think that it has to go further, I think we need to have some kind of criteria, so I just have to figure out, so that this doesn't become a loophole, people will find out about and start using, and the fire, making sure that we're on the same page with the fire department in terms of health, safety, and welfare, but also protecting the character of our local environment. That where does that criteria lie? It doesn't lie with the fire department, and can we trust that criteria? Or do we have to bring the criteria over into our world somehow?
I don't know the chief, but do you guys think he'd be willing to come to one of our meetings?
I'm gonna meet with him next year. I think
He's a
that's-
nice guy, he's very personable, he probably would, but
Cause I think if we can explain to him, like, this is the exact type of building that we're looking to see.
and there are only a handful of these, 2nd and 3rd Street, just east of Harrison Avenue.
Yeah.
1 or 2 left down on Chestnut, there aren't, this is one of probably 6 or 7 of these buildings left in the National Historic District.
Right,
So it's a big deal,
yeah, absolutely.
and somebody should have a little bit of skin in the game, and nobody has any skin in the game, that's what needs to change if possible.
Right,
Is this building worse than many other buildings in town?
Absolutely not, they were walking along the roof to take it apart today. I watched
So then my other question is there any language currently, or could there be language that says you have to make every reasonable effort to restore and keep the building for, and you have to demonstrate that?
well, that is in our code. But we have, that's the exemption, that's the concern. So if someone is applying for the COA, we do have that. But if they are applying for the exemption to not have to do a COA, I mean, what I just read tonight is what we're working on.
So, and I agree, I think a structural engineer needs to be involved. Could you send someone, even if the fire department says so, could the building department do an additional inspection and then come to some agreement?
Yeah, and I think, yes, we could, I mean, that's what we can, you know, decide tonight, but I think there's two ways to go about this, because I can interpret, the staff can interpret something that's in an ordinance or in code. Code is a question of ordinances. But if something is not clear, if there's a loophole that's being used, in code, and it could be, you know, essentially a challenge, but it's not clear enough, then the code needs to be more clear. So that it's not subject to interpretation. And so if that is what we want to require, then we should put that in, because, you know, in this case, I was interpreting, well, they are coming with a letter from a governing authority with jurisdiction, but it's not both governing authorities. In this case, it's not both the fire department and the building department. So I think we should spell that out much further. But keeping in mind that we still have to keep the exemption in place for those reasonable situations that may present themselves, whereas, you know, there's a fire, that, you know, that happens in a building is leaning into the street and is being temporarily supported or something. So,
Right, very different story.
yeah.
But that would be and that is an emergency action.
Mhm.
This obviously is not an emergency action.
Yeah, so I think the next step, so going back, to the question about, fire marshal community, the next step is to meet with the fire marshal, because this, you know, Laura and I were talking about this for hours last week as this was happening, trying to figure out how to proceed here. The next step, meeting with, fire marshal next week, explaining the concern, explaining, we need more, this has to be better, we have a loophole now, and we're very, very concerned about it. And explaining how the potential for your loss of resources, you know, how this will affect character, et cetera. And we want to be ensured that this is not going to be something that anyone can do. And then how can we better clarify, I guess, the criteria, how can we better document and demonstrate that the criteria, for the fire department's emergency enforcement action is being met, and communicate that if it's an emergency enforcement action, that needs to be better documented on, you know, an appropriate form.
How difficult would it be to have an emergency action from the fire department require a second opinion, a written second opinion from a qualified individual, whatever that is?
Mhm.
How hard would it be to change that procedure?
I think that's a good question. I think that right there is so much easier than going back and amending the code.
Right,
Right.
amending the code is
Yeah.
a months-long
Right.
slog. Is there an easy change that can be made? How would you do that?
I mean, our code is our code, so I can issue administrative interpretations and I can put them in writing, but that's really kind of like a bad practice. Like if something needs to be spelled out clearly, if something needs to be spelled out clearly enough in a written administrative interpretation that's kept on file, that means you need to go back and you need to amend the code. But we understand, you know, that's a multi-month process, so that is an option. You know, perhaps long term, we need to better spell this out, but the best option is with the fire, understanding what the fire department has, and I mean, we fund the fire department, so having some control for the criteria for approval, just like you said, and that.
So that could just be a procedural change.
Procedural change.
Making sure he has criteria to make that decision on, and then all those boxes are checked, you know, and then that gives us that.
But are you talking about a decision that has to be made by the fire department? They have to agree to that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a meeting,
So
we have to
that's
have
the
a fire-
issue. I mean, when you talk to them, you'll get a feeling about whether they're inclined to do this or not.
Yes.
Well, and there needs to be some liability. The fire department needs to understand that they hold some liability here. If they make that determination, there needs to be number one, obviously, a true written statement. But yeah, some type of a qualified second opinion.
Just like the HPC does with
Absolutely.
findings and conditions for a COA, these are the reasons why we found that the criteria were met. But, their letter did not do that. I don't know if, it sounded like there was not another form. I asked him if that could be produced on some other form, if he had plans to do that, he said no. So, if those forms don't exist, then that sounds like that means those forms need to be produced and with some kind of documentation that the criteria is being met, because that protects their liability.
Cause you don't even know.
Yeah,
if they
introducing
based it.
liability to them, I think, is the first step.
Okay, got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you don't even really know what they based it on.
No.
Just a,
Exactly.
That's what we.
$50
that's-
in a six pack.
that's-
Yeah.
And that's the concern.
$50 in a six pack.
So just to take it back to like a higher level, so planning department, we have zoning. And we have historic preservation and we have subdivision, right? And then there's a code for each of those, Title 16, Title 17, the various sections. So if you are issuing a decision or I'm issuing an administrative decision, it's based on that criteria. And we'll put that in writing, like with your, staff report and your findings and conditions and attach your certificate of appropriateness. This is why we think it meets the criteria, and this is how the criteria is met. If there's any unique situations, here are the findings, here's the conditions. That's the documentation. Building permitting with the, Lake County Building Department, we're using, International Residential Code, International Building Code, electrical code, mechanical code, et cetera. And then, there's specific code criteria. I don't know the International Fire Code. I don't know if the decision to issue an emergency enforcement action comes from the International Fire Code or from some other state statute.
No, because historic buildings are exempt. There are all kinds of loopholes around that with building code.
So that's the understanding that I don't have. Hopefully we can make progress with the fire department next week.
So I think we should put this on the agenda for the next meeting as well, so we can follow up after your meeting with Chief Boyle. Is that agreeable? gentlemen?
I think you should see if he'd be willing to come.
Yeah,
And
I do too.
because especially if we have someone like Joey explaining how we can save, like, I've saved worse buildings than what's condemned there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it might be good for, or maybe not him, but a representative from there.
Well, and the whole point is applying pressure, so it would almost have to be.
Yeah.
If he made the decision, it would be nice to have for him to explain why he made the decision.
Yeah.
And maybe we understand
And
differently.
how he bases that.
Than how it
decision.
looks on 10 pages.
Yeah.
And I understand you're a cat on a hot tin roof in this subject. Please understand, we don't think you did anything wrong at all. But it's an incredibly frustrating thing after everything we've just been through.
No, absolutely. this is
And
why,
that particular one, I mean, that's ground zero of that building.
right?
That's just like the pump house that's up Sixth Street, that's just like the old boarding houses that are on the east side of Second and Third Street. Those are incredibly vulnerable buildings. And anybody else finds out about this and they're just gone. And there is no bringing them back. Nobody's gonna build another clapboard two-story building on East Sixth Street ever again.
Right. So I think best case and worst case scenarios, so best case scenarios, fire department comes back and says, okay, well, these are the reasons why I allowed this, I conducted an emergency enforcement action. These are the reasons why, or in the future, I'll put this on form. And in the future, I'll state my criteria. And this is why I think this is a unique situation. This would never happen again. That would be best case scenario. And I'll come and present this to the Planning and Zoning Commission, or sorry, Historic Preservation Commission, so we have an understanding for all parties involved. Worst case scenario is that fire department says, it's, subject to my interpretation, here's something in code that says that, if anybody wants to propose to demolish something, that I can authorize it, and I don't. There's
Then we
nothing
have to change
we can do, then we have to go back to code, and we have to put something in more clear, and that will involve, and so this, again, not a moratorium, this is just code, have city attorney, who probably, I would meet the city attorney, maybe we could have city attorney join one of our meetings, and talk about the concerns, and then add additional language. You can probably look at some case studies for other communities, historic communities, that do have demolition concern, and see how their exemption language, if it's any more detailed. I can tell you that this would never happen in Brad. We had design standards that, that it was actually not in the code, it was the design standards that would have prevented this. But also because even a dangerous building could not be demolished basically in brick, it also made historic preservation much more expensive. And so that's the other end of the spectrum in terms of affordability, which is, trickles into, factors we have to consider with historic preservation. So I know that we don't want to go there and say that, okay, buildings can never be demolished. The site can't be used until somebody comes in with $2 million and turns this into a McMansion. But there has to be something in.
One more thing on the emergency action. An emergency action, once again, connotates time sensitive. There would have to be a time limit on an action. If I authorize this on January 3rd,
Yeah,
you have 30 days to act on this, not 12 months and you just do it whenever it's convenient for you and you got the manpower.
I didn't have anything in the code to really base this on, but in the authorization letter, I did say the demolition must be commenced and within 30 days of this authorization is void.
Right.
So I think that addressed that concern, but that's also something to roll into this in the future.
Right.
That, okay, if you need this exemption, then work has to be completed within X amount of time.
Yeah, if it's truly dangerous, it's truly an emergency, do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, it's a different situation.
Yeah, and this, in the, there's so many frustrating things about this, but one of the frustrating things is, it sounds like the fire department came out in January. Right, we're in September.
Right.
So 9 months later, an emergency enforcement action is being conducted. That's what the fire department's communicating, right? That this is an emergency enforcement action in September, following a January inspection.
Right. So, whole point. Yeah, 30 days would seem to be the outside of a enforceable time.
Yeah.
The other thing too is in the fire department, yes, they understand safe structures, but there aren't any structural engineers, there aren't any historians, there aren't any, there's no one community based there making decisions. So having a second opinion, a written second opinion by a qualified individual would seem to be a requirement.
Right. So, in other words, both building department, review of a letter stamped by a structural engineer and from the fire department, assuming that's based on national fire code.
At minimum, if you're trying to go around the COA process.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, so we're gonna try to get Steve Boyle here for the,
I think we'll wait and see how their meeting goes and
Okay.
put it on the agenda and see whether Steve should come to that meeting.
and have you been to that building? Have you?
Yeah, so I went and I took as many photos as I could, saved them on our server, asked the property owner, I put this in the authorization letter, asked the property, and I called him, talking with him about this. Asked the property owner to provide as many photos as he could of the structure that I couldn't take from the street. So that we have those for as a future resource.
What's the address?
So 211 East 6th Street.
And I just want to remind you guys, this is not something that, shouldn't say remind, I need to tell you, because it's for site work, but there's a city council work session tonight, so we do have to finish by the.
What's the work session?
I'm very sure, now I have to run.
There's a work session at 6?
Yeah. So,
So we need to be out or we can make them wait.
or we can make them, however you feel about it, I
Just always like to have an option. No, I'm sure you don't
I
have.
will add this to the agenda for next meeting as well, to get a report back from Shapen after this meeting with Chief Boyle.
Okay, so that's it for now. We'll revisit this.
Yeah.
Okay. Develop a mission statement.
Don't look at me, look at Steve. Steve's running this one.
Well, we need a mission statement. Just about every other HPC across the country has one. We need it for our grant proposals. And as I explained last time, State Historical Fund is looking for a certain verbiage in it. So I sent out. At the last meeting, everybody got a whole series of possible ones from across the country, not necessarily ones that I liked all of, but I suggested what I liked the best. And I asked for feedback by the first. I got a couple of people to feedback to me. And so these are in your packet here, what I got. And then Marcia yesterday sent me another possibility.
Yeah, I did, and I apologize. I got confused as to what was due on the first and what wasn't due on the first. And this obviously was due on the first. And I did write, but then I looked at these and I thought, well, I sort of like one of these better, so I did write one, but I don't think it's necessarily that good, so I didn't really submit it, but if you don't believe me, I do have it with me.
Here with this, or do you?
Oh, really?
the others are
Okay.
better?
Yeah, it says the Leadville Historic Preservation Commission serves as caretaker for one of Colorado's most unique cities, ensuring that its homes and businesses continue to reflect the city's rich and complex heritage.
That's really good.
But I like,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's late, and you know, I'm not,
I'd
I'm for,
give it
you know,
a
making
choice.
deadlines.
try to include diversity, inclusion, and
I couldn't put all that other stuff
I know,
on,
it's
I'm getting
really-
so. I actually thought about this, you wake up in the middle of the night and I have notes on my phone that I think, oh, we should put this in it, and then you look at them the next day and it's like, what? What is this? So, yeah.
Well, anyway, does anybody like any of the ones that have been proposed? Or do you like parts of them? So that we can make some movement on this, before we submit our state historical fund proposal, we really need to have something nailed down. And that needs to go in the Alpamar proposal as well.
I like the first one and the last one, but I'm for short stuff, you know.
Yeah, the
not
last one
cutting.
sounds.
Yeah, I like the last one as well.
People for
One comment I would make, and this is based on the grant proposal you were working on. State is very concerned about having some sort of DEI component in the mission statement. So, you know, there's one here, I think on the second one, that last sentence sort of addresses that, I think, in a realistic way. And maybe that can be tacked on the end of whatever the commission likes.
Or we could take that sentence and put it with
Well, it
some,
does say protection of the diverse cultural, but yeah, I see what you said. And historically. But. This. We can get started with the diversity.
It just say Leadville National Historic Landmark District.
Well, we already got Leadville in there. I don't think we need to repeat that.
Okay.
The second one was written by ChatGPT.
that's interesting.
I mean, perhaps by talking about protecting the, you know, the diverse heritage of our local resources. That you could sort of touch on or even address the component. No, it's not the sole mission of the HPC, but a lot of the resources and like the surveys that we're doing are trying to understand, you know, who are the people who built these places and there's diversity component to that.
Yeah, I think it's hard to add that sentence. It just, I like the idea of keeping it shorter, so I like the last one as well. It's hard to add diversity and inclusion.
Well, but we haven't added those two words, but you do have diverse and community engagement both involved in that
Yeah,
sentence already, so the connotation is there,
yeah.
even though the exact words aren't. Scott, would you make any changes to that third one?
What, to the last one?
Right, yeah, it's the last
Yeah.
one.
I mean, it looks pretty good to me.
Did you put inclusive community engagement? Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Actually, that would be a good change.
That would be a thing that we're trying to inclusion.
Inclusive community engagement would be a good thing.
I think inclusive of me and community means the same thing though, kind of.
It does.
I was wondering that, like, when I said it, so, because I don't know that it sounds as good as I thought it did in my head, because it does to me the same as me. I don't know, I was just trying to put that word in something.
I think the reviewers are targeting, but I mean, they've got something in mind, and I don't think it's our diverse architecture or the diverse people that don't. People here now. Here's a word that like to see.
Add it,
Add that last sentence from
inclusive community engagement.
inclusive. Okay.
So you like the final one with the added word?
Correct.
Okay, and we have a vote on that?
Sure,
What's the vote?
we do need to make a decision, so do you want to read it as it stands with that? You know what I mean?
The Leadville Historic Preservation Commission ensures preservation and protection of the diverse cultural and historic resources of the National Historic Landmark District through leadership, advocacy, education, and inclusive community engagement.
That sounds pretty good.
Sounds great.
I don't like inclusive. Just my thing, but I think we're close, and if you all love it, so be it.
Do you have any alternatives to that?
Hmm?
Do you have any alternatives to that?
I just would take it out. I think community engagement is enough.
I think
It's just not-
that's something that the grant writers are gonna be looking for, and it,
The word
searched for that
inclusive
word.
needs to be in here somewhere.
I think they searched for those words.
And mission statements get revised every few years anyway, so you're not committing to an eternal mission statement.
but it
I mean,
isn't.
if you want to put it in, fine. I don't have nothing.
You can vote no.
I'm with you, parse everything you possibly can, but in this case, it seems to make sense.
You want to get that word in there, fine. Should we vote on the whole thing?
I think we should do a roll call vote and make and the motion should be to adopt a specific
Okay.
mission. I'm sorry, I don't have anything.
Would somebody like to make that motion?
Edwards moves that we adopt a new mission statement for the Leadville Historic Preservation Commission.
I will second that.
So you want to do a roll call vote?
I do, as long as does everyone feel that that motion covered the exact one that you want? We all are in agreement on the one that Steve just read, so that's the one that we're voting on, okay?
Mhm.
We all understand that. Okay, then yeah. Commissioner Edwards,
Yes, with the word inclusive.
Commissioner Lindquist,
Yes, with the word inclusive.
Chair Martinik.
Yes, reluctantly with the word inclusive.
So, but the record shows she was reluctant. Commissioner Spillman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whittington.
Yes,
Okay, that is approved with the word inclusive.
Okay,
okay,
We have a mission statement.
I'll send you an email with the revised one in it, so
Perfect.
you can put it in wherever you want to put it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Steve.
for putting that one through.
Well, thank you for the decision.
Thank you for
That
doing
didn't take
that.
nearly as long as I
You never
thought.
twisted anyone's arm, did you?
well, when we have a deadline to get out. We should always.
Breathing down.
Okay, next we have develop survey questionnaire.
And I think I put that in the wrong place because I talked about it when we were
Mhm.
talking about all that other stuff, so
I think we've covered
I
that.
think we've covered that, and if anybody wants to send me anything, we will get a solid one by next meeting. but we're done with that.
Okay, discuss publication of code changes. What is that about?
That is me having a note from the last meeting on the scribbling pages that said that you guys wanted to put this on an agenda to make sure we knew how we were publicizing the code changes. Because I think we've talked about it, something in the newspaper.
And I think the ball's in my court on that, to basically take a lot of the language that's already drafted, and put that into, you know, like a letter to the paper.
Make it a
kind of-
column.
Kind of, yeah, like an informal way, let the public know about, the historic district code amendments. My goal was to, since both of those ordinances ran concurrently for the table of uses, HPC was not involved with the table of uses and definition project, but it was a massive code project. It was going concurrently with the HPC. We didn't really talk about it much, but it was in the works for 5.5 years with a consultant, and so point being that I wanted, since both of those were passed at the same time, I kind of wanted to do those concurrently and make sure that one, I didn't get one done and then just the other one dragged out for months, and I didn't get, since they were published the same date, I was gonna try to have both of them, whether they went back, they were ready at the same time, whether they went in the same paper or they went back to back papers or something, but I wanted to have those, but I'm not, I just haven't had time to get it done. So that's, I already have, you know, a lot of the language already drafted in terms of the memos that went into the HPC packets, the P and Z packets, the city council packets, just a matter of just copying and pasting a lot of that and customizing it into formatting into a letter.
So when do you think you might have time for?
It's been on my to-do list every week. Getting pushed back, so I had it, by the time blocked out next week to work on it.
I mean, if somebody else wants to write it, I don't want to write it, I can't, but, somebody.
I mean, yeah, I'm a professional optimist when it comes to time management, so I'm hoping that I'll. get
You
it
hope,
done
you
next
want
week.
to, you want to write it.
Yeah, I do want to write it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'd be happy, I'd be happy to, I just gotta. Great time.
Okay, well, that's, now, is there, this is something we should also put into some other form to get to the public?
I think that would be about as broad a net as you can cast.
Yeah, I mean,
Do that as Mark.
you know, people were concerned erroneously about what we were doing when we had that one meeting. So,
Right.
and I'm sure you'll cover that in the article, but there should be other ways to reach people too, so I'm just thinking.
Hand something out at the community coffee.
Hmm?
If you have a flyer, you could hand something out, I go to those sometimes and could hand a flyer out at the community coffee on.
Yeah, you just, don't you usually have just like about 30 people there or 40 or
Yeah, but there are people that are kind of.
to talk to people? Well, I mean, that certainly would be one option, yes.
Yeah,
You know, they could be asked to post it in their workplace or in
Mhm.
public.
And we could send them to
That
all
would
the
help a little
realtors
bit.
too.
Yeah.
But
So
I
they
had
understand.
thought we were sending out a postcard or something like that, just announcing, you know, there have been some code changes you need to be aware of. That would go out to everybody, every postal paper. I had thought that was what we had in mind.
Yeah, it's sort of like what we're going to do in just the little area for the survey, but something that would go to everybody and,
Seems to me right now, people have a good excuse for saying they were unaware of the changes. Because it's been now a month and a half, and we haven't done anything to tell people this has happened.
Yeah, a flyer with bullet points and then a link to where they can find those on our website.
The good news is I think we are seeing the building department start to send a few more our way. And when I do get the sense when the nature of the language and that's deferred, you know, there's grass, and does something like this require city sign off? It's like, yes, absolutely. So I do think that's good, but it's also concerning because I think there are some things that are not getting forwarded to the city for sign off. And I think I've mentioned this before at HPC meeting, there are some things in the works, to address that concern from another way. That would give the city more control over those kind of things.
Is that something you can share with us, or? in the future?
Not on record.
Fair enough.
We're recording. We'll wait, maybe have some updates at a later date.
Well, maybe there will be, maybe the mayor's planning on a mail, he's probably not, he's gonna be out of office soon, but he, you know, there might be another mailing going out to the community, and that would certainly be an option.
Yeah.
To
And I
everybody.
think we would do that, and he's offered to do one of them, either our survey flyer from his budget
Mhm.
on flyers, and then we could do the other one. I mean, we could do more than one.
The code flyers and the
Code flyers.
expensive, that should be on his budget, we should do the other one.
It goes further,
Use his thing.
and the mail out further, so.
Okay, well, we should keep thinking though about getting this. word
Yes,
out.
yes,
And the
and
best way to
I'll
do
keep it, maybe I'll put this under updates,
Mhm.
and that way we can just keep it on our agenda.
And I
keep
think,
it, so
You
we
know,
don't-
like the Wednesday coffee, that's a good idea, definitely. But we probably need to put together some piece of
Okay.
literature that
Right.
we can.
And we could get pamphlets that we can hand out. We've always talked about having them at real estate places and things like that. Not that they're just gonna get trashed or something like that, but we can think about doing an actual pamphlet, even over at the visitor center. They have an awful lot of pamphlets that
We
we
have,
use a lot, so
we have money left, don't we?
we actually do at this point, yes, we do.
I mean, I don't know, what, you know, what we have left, I can't remember, but
I think it's about 2,000 or 3,000, if I'm not mistaken, we've almost,
I mean,
Maybe like 2,300.
yes.
I mean, maybe some of that money could be used to publicize some of
Absolutely.
this.
A lot of cities have a key, communications person who handles all these things we're talking about right now. And so, any updates from any departments, all go, from police department, or fire, or streets, or anything like that, all go through like one person. We have a city that level doesn't have that kind of person. So,
We need that.
but,
Yeah.
a lot of city, town, county governments, positions, so. But yeah, so, I definitely understand the importance, and it's high on the list to get done.
Sorry, we're drowning, we really are. We're sorry.
And you were two of the community city employees.
That's true.
Anything more on this topic?
I think we'll just keep it on updates. I'll just keep it on updates so that we can continue.
And I do have one thing, at the community dinner Saturday, some guy came up to me and actually talked to me about HPC and not, why there's so much sports in the newspaper. And so, he said he bought a house, a historic house. And he said, why don't we put out these little round things, that have the date of the house on them? And, obviously I said, we wouldn't be able to provide those, but we could make those possibly for sale. And I was thinking, once we do this, the first section, the 2 streets, 8th and 9th, and there might be people there who would like to have something like that on their house. That just said, the year that it was built.
So it would be a really nice thing to do if HPC provided a standard one for that bill,
Yeah,
and the homeowner pays for it.
yeah,
And there is a
exactly.
margin built into it that donates a little bit of, part of the proceeds of this plaque benefits the HPC. That could be
I think that would be a
it doesn't
really
need to be profit making, but it's something that we could provide as a service that doesn't have to cost us any money and puts a little bit of money in the
Mhm.
HPC
I would keep
budget.
them uniform if we.
Yeah, I think they should be
It'd be the same.
uniform.
And
because then
that
it would
whole
be-
point is it'd be something you'd really only be able to get from us.
And I actually looked at some of these online just quickly to see the prices.
Sure.
And when this is just something I pulled off, it's not necessarily a company that I know anything about, but they have them, in brass and even cheap ones in plastic, which I don't think I would particularly,
Yeah.
but
But yeah, the homeowner wants it. We do the research to get the year of their house or whatever. We order the sign for them.
Mhm.
They pay an extra $50. That extra $50 goes into the coffers and helps pay for us taking it to them when it's done. We order it and take it to them. Along with a Leadville Preserved here ground stick.
No, I think it's something to think about, definitely, because I think people are very proud of he was very proud of his house. And I've been proud of my little old house.
Sure.
Do you
And
want to put that on an agenda after the survey, or how do you want me to keep this on? Because that's a great idea. Do you want me to keep it on an agenda or wait till after the survey is done? Or?
You know, it's almost like one of those things to help motivate for the surveys.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of the things that we can get out of this process is we'll have a very good understanding of, you know, from an expert.
Right.
The historic character of your building and that it's contributing and once you check in all those boxes, then there's some recognition available.
Absolutely.
yeah, I do
It's a
think
great idea.
we should, keep looking into this.
I'll
The
put that-
prices of probably what we want would be around $80 or $90. Unless we want to go and get something, we don't want cheap, but we don't have to get real.
Basically, just ride the heck out of it. If they want the plaque and they've got it. Let some of their property, give us all the
Let us
information.
take some good pictures.
But I think it's worth doing, and I think
Georgetown.
once you get a bunch of them on your street, the people who don't have them,
Right.
We'll
They're gonna
want
feel
them.
left out.
the
Yeah.
only problem, of course, is all those 1888 houses.
Right.
You
I
have
think
to,
that's where the survey comes in.
Hopefully the survey-
can
Yes.
help Identify some of that.
because, you can find out,
Right.
anyway, just wanted to say that.
Georgetown,
think-
has-
Yeah.
have you been to Georgetown?
What?
Have you been to Georgetown? Georgetown has a lot of those.
No, I haven't been there lately.
They have that program.
We could ask them where they get theirs.
Just FYI, I put pictures on here that Kurt sent us of St. George's, that's just so y'all can see.
It's looking good.
Yeah,
I do want to remind everyone that anybody who wanted to go to Hayden Ranch, the open house for Hayden Ranch is set for September 21st. If you haven't registered and can be info, let me know, but
I went back and
reminder
hit
on
that, I went back and hit that link again this week and it's not working again.
oh, they said it was fun.
They fixed it, but it's not working again.
Okay,
I was able to register.
probably in that window that he fixed it.
He fixed it and you could register for a while. I clicked on it a couple of days ago because I couldn't remember whether I registered and it wasn't working again.
Oh,
Well, one
That's like-
of the links on what Lori sent out worked and one didn't.
Gotcha. Maybe I clicked on the wrong one. I don't know.
Right, there were two different on the same email, so.
that should be interesting then. I've been there a couple times, but it's always interesting. Okay, does anybody have anything else? I mean, we're doing well. Could talk for 12 more minutes, but somebody wants oh, Scott, how are things going at Yale?
They're going pretty well. It's been very hot and humid here, which has been
Oh.
extremely unpleasant. But other than that, things are going well. I have a nice office. I'm getting good work done. So
Good.
Exciting,
Oh, we miss you, but
we do.
Yeah. I miss Colorado.
I
Right,
have
what was our
that.
high 65, I think, the last couple of days, yesterday it didn't even get up to 60, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
but we won't taunt
Sorry.
you with that.
All right.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion that we
I
adjourn?
moved that we adjourned.
Edward said.
Second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no? Okay. That's it.
Give me a time, please.
Hmm?
Time.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 6:48.
5:48.
I'm 5:48, sorry.
Adjourned. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Bye, Scott.
Bye.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Right.
We're off record now. So that, we're off record now, so the.
You're off the record, but you can't talk about